So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tim Draper. Let's hear it. Have a time.
Thanks, Mike. Great. Thanks to Startup Grind for putting this thing together. They asked me to speak on what makes a great idea. And I thought about it, and I thought, anger, frustration, desperation. And then I started to go through all of our big successes, and I thought, yeah. You know, the Skype guys they started Kazaa, and they were driven out of business by the threats of all the lawsuits from the music industry. And so then they kind of moved, and they thought, well, what can we do with this technology? It's really interesting, neat technology. And so they said, well, we can apply it to Wi-Fi. And then they started working on that. That was actually when I promised to fund them. And then they called me up and they said, are you still in? We're going to change it. We're going to actually make it so that you can make phone calls this way. And I said, whoa, what? Fantastic. And then with Hotmail, you know, we gave these guys $150,000 or something. And and after the first board meeting, they said, it's up, it's running. And I said, well, that's great. How are you going to get the word out? They said, but it's web-based email, and it's just great. And I said, well, how are you going to get the word out? And they said, well, how about TV ads? And I said, well, yeah, you can get a nanosecond on cable channel 482. And then they said, well, how about billboards on 101? And I said, yeah, right. $100,000 a month. That's basically everything we gave you up there for 1 month. And then we were all sort of thinking, God, but it's so good and it's so important. And that was where I kind of came up with one of my, like, 2 ideas that I've had in my life. Where I said, wait a second, you're giving this away free, and what if you, and it's going to go like mail to people. And I said, well, what if you put a little message at the bottom of everybody's screen that says, P.S. I love you, get your free email at Hotmail. And they kind of looked at me like, of all the investors we could have had, why did we get this guy? And I kept pounding, and I thought, wait, if I send you an email, and then you send it to your friends, and they send it to their friends, this could actually really spread very quickly, and you don't have, my desperation was, I didn't want to invest, you know, another $1 million, $10 million, $20 million into this company because I didn't really know what we had. And so I thought, well, God, I was desperate, and I had to come up with an idea. And this was it. Put a little message at the bottom of everybody's screen. So they came, I kept pounding and pounding and pounding, and finally they came back to me and said, okay, we're going to do it, but no P.S. I love you. And to this day, I think we would have had a much more peaceful and loving world if they had left it in there. So how does an idea come? And how do you create an idea generator? How do you generate new ideas? My other idea, incidentally, that I think was great was I felt this frustration and desperation in 2008 when it seemed like the world was coming to an end and currencies weren't going to count anymore and dollar was going to be worthless, and nobody stepped up. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, all of the education that we've been doing with our kids is putting them all in boxes, and they don't want to step up and be heroes. You know, this is a hero time. You know, there's your opportunity right now. And that was when I came up with the idea for Draper University of Heroes to try to attract those people who had that spark in their eyes, that little piece of fire where if pushed, if we give them a big enough push, they will go be heroes. And so that was my other good idea. The other ideas, I don't know. I've had a lot of ideas where I sunk companies here and destroyed other companies, and you know, people lost their job. All sorts of things have happened because of my ideas. So what I want to talk to you about now is how we could systematize these great ideas. We also backed Baidu, and that was sort of an act of desperation because we started funding companies in China, and I had funded 3 companies in China, all with people into companies where people said to me, we have great government connections. And I lost all of our money in those, and I was pushing pretty hard with my partners to put more money into China, and they're looking and going, what, really? And so out of desperation, I sort of said, well, why don't we just back those people that we would normally back here in the US, get those, you know, real tigers who really want to make something interesting happen. And so I was able to put money into Baidu and Focus Media and YeePay and a couple of others that ended up being huge wins. I think there is something about this. And I think the idea comes from a connection with the world. If you have this frustration, somehow you get the great vibe from the world. I think we're all so interconnected. We're all sort of a part of this big whole. And and that's whole with a W-H-O-L-E. We're all a part of this big whole, and we are connected, and we are all helping each other in various ways, and some of them are nonverbal and somehow just happen. I was at survival training with my Draper University guys this weekend, and I popped a tire, and I was out in the middle of nowhere. And I was thinking, oh, God. And I felt that just serious frustration. And somehow in the middle of nowhere, a AAA driver just drives by, and then he goes, oh, hey, you need some help? And I thought, you know, for one thing, we call that Draper luck. But for another, it's like we're all connected to each other. We're all helping each other. And when there is that intense frustration, and something good can come if that person is helped, the world helps somehow. I still don't know how. I know that we're all connected, but the world helps. So now let's get down to brass tacks. The way I have started to look at the venture world is I am looking for companies that are transformative to an industry. And I want it to come from that frustration. And I want it to come from that frustration knowing that the price is too high and the service is too bad. Whenever you see that in an industry, you have an opportunity as an entrepreneur. It's very clear that we were being overcharged for long distance, and they didn't care. And we had bad service, and then Skype came along, and everybody had to up their game. It's very clear that riding in a taxi was always a little dicey, and then Uber came along, and everybody had to up their game. The same kind of thing happens over and over and over. The post office was a total disaster, and they never changed any of it. You had to lick poison and put it into a piece of paper and put it in, and then just pray that the thing would somehow get to the address that was on the front. And then Hotmail came along, and then the post office had to up their game. So we've seen amazing transformations. We've seen information changed, communications changed, gaming. All of these industries have been changed by new technologies. And those industries are all getting much more efficient, and everybody's working hard, and it's competitive, and good things are happening. Well, so what I'm looking for are those ones that are still not competitive. So I started to look around, and the ones I came up with are pretty interesting. I'm sure there's some that you guys have that you're thinking about and saying, hey, this is why I want to go after this. I'm experiencing frustration as a customer, as a supplier, as a whatever. So, so I actually found frustration in the venture capital business. And I thought, wow, there is a disconnect between our limited partners and our entrepreneurs, and we're trying to get in between, and we're charging way too much, and we are providing not good service to our entrepreneurs. And so I got all excited about that, and that's what got me thinking, well, what technologies are going to help change that? And so I thought Bitcoin, the blockchain, crowdfunding, all of these new electronic shares, all these new technologies are quite exciting because they are going to transform my industry. My industry also has another problem, and that is liquidity. If you're a shareholder of Uber today, my sympathies go with you. You might have $1 billion on paper, but you can't do anything with it. It's totally illiquid. And so what you need to, what I started to think about is how do you create the better liquidity, better service in venture capital? And then I extended that to all finance. And so the peer-to-peer lending is taking on the banks, and the second markets are taking on the investment banks. And they're doing it in a way where they're taking new technology and applying it and providing a better service. So finance is one area, and then electronic shares are just magic because using e-shares or CapShare, you don't have to worry about the lawyer and the accountant and all that stuff. Everybody knows who owns what. It's all up in the cloud. It's all there. Ultimately, it'll all be up on the blockchain, and everybody's going to know, and everybody's going to see exactly what they own. And it's amazing how often my number of shares that I think I own and the entrepreneur's number that they think I own are two very different things. And not always from where I think I own more than they do, but that's maybe 2/3 of the time. So there are some really interesting things happening in our world, finance. Finance can be completely changed. There's really no reason, really, to have fiat currency because digital currency is much more effective and efficient and fluid. Very easy to move Bitcoin or Ether or whatever through these channels, and doesn't have those artificial geographic borders. Okay, so I'll talk about another area where I think that there might be a pretty interesting opportunity. Whenever there's something called big anything, like the big 4 car companies or the big accountants or the bulge bracket investment banks or whatever, you know you've got an opportunity there. And they call it big pharma now. And the reason there's an opportunity is that they start getting a relationship with the government, and they create more and more laws for themselves and for everybody else to pretty much block everybody out of the business, but at the same time, they're not anticipating what new technologies could come. So in medicine, you know, if you cured cancer today, it would cost $1 billion in 15 years before you even got it into somebody's body. Somebody's body that was getting it prescribed. I mean, there are plenty of test cases, and you can put it in your own body, and apparently that is legal. But you can't put it into your buddy's body. You can't do that. Well, that to me looks like kind of an interesting opportunity, medicine. We back Theranos. Instead of using vials and vials of blood, and giving it to the vampires, you just take 2 drops of blood and run 50 tests in a microfluidic chamber. Those tests are stored in the cloud. You can then apply that data to the DNA tests and your Fitbit results and your body bug, heartbeat, whatever. All those things can go into a machination of data that can then determine, how best to target you if you run into some disease or other. Because you may not, penicillin may not be the right thing for you. Maybe it's immunoblasters or something. So I think medicine has some interesting opportunities in data and getting personal assistance through the web instead of going through, just always having to go through the doctor. It's too expensive to have all the doctors do all the magic that they do. So that's another area where I think there's big opportunity. I think education has been done so badly for so long that I think that there's a really interesting opportunity there, and the MOOCs are taking advantage of it, the massively online curriculum, and the teacher rankings, where the best teachers are actually starting to get an online presence, and they're making more money, and good things are starting to happen there. But there are some really interesting things in education where, like what we're doing with students, we're allowing students to fail and to do stupid things. Because if you think about it, the following were stupid things. Electricity, you guys out there flying a kite in the rain. The penicillin, okay, let's feed these sick people moldy bread. The Velcro, let's study a burr under a microscope. Reese's peanut butter cups, I think that was an accident too. Anyway, so stupid things, we kind of encourage more stupid things to happen. Everybody, by being smart, being so smart, we're cutting off all our options. We're limiting ourselves. We're not as strong as we are if we're all willing to be stupid. It's really interesting. It makes a big difference if you start thinking that way. You start thinking, okay, well, I'm going to do this stupid thing because then something might come of it. A new idea might come of it. And if you're just on the track and you're always just doing smart things, you are not advancing society. But you are all entrepreneurs. So no matter whether you're a big success or a big failure, you are moving the ball forward. Because if you jump off a cliff and you die, you have moved, everyone else has just benefited from that and learned from it. So I think it's a very powerful thing to break away from what they've taught you in school, because what they've taught you in school is history. So one of the things I'd like to talk about is, actually, let me go to one more industry that really needs transforming. And that is, okay, think about the industry that just makes you the most frustrated. Where are you in the lines the longest? Where do you run into like blockades and brick walls and trouble? And it's government. It's government. They're in your way all the time, and they charge the most and provide the least. This is a huge, where some of these other industries, yeah, you can improve this industry or that industry by 5 or 10% and create a $1 billion, $50 billion industry. Well, in the case of government, it's the biggest industry in the world, and it is a mess. We had the Prime Minister of Estonia come to Draper University to speak. And he said, and he lived in the Silicon Valley for 9 years, and he's 33 years old, and he went back to Estonia. And he said, okay, now I know what to do. And he's creating a virtual government. First of all, the 6-year-olds are all taught to code. Like, that's pretty cool. But he said, just by instituting digital signatures, we save 2% of our GDP. Think of all that, you know, paperwork and everybody moving it around and all that stuff. He saved 2% of his GDP. And then by instituting digital voting, he said all the young people started to vote. Because young people, it's so much easier. Just go to your device and go, who do I want to vote for? ABB. Anybody but Bernie. Socialism, by the way, just so you know, socialism didn't really work out for North Korea. By the way, they make 1/25 the amount per capita that South Korea makes. And at lunch, they're counted out 20 grains of corn for lunch. 20 grains of corn. And the average North Korean is now about 4 inches shorter than the average South Korean. Didn't work for the old Soviet Union either. That was a socialist country. And it didn't work for East Germany either. So, look, the free markets work. Didn't work for China under Mao. The free markets work. Deng Xiaoping, my dad met Deng Xiaoping and he said to me, he said, how many companies have you funded? How many entrepreneurs have you funded? And I said, well, I think I've gotten about 1,000 of them started. And he said, that's nothing. Deng Xiaoping released 1 billion entrepreneurs. Think about that, wow. And all of a sudden, China just, quality of life in China has just taken off. Last 40 years, it's been unbelievable. So before you think, hey, socialism is a good idea, look at history. It just hasn't worked. So, also, I mean, while I'm up here, I might as well. I've got an interesting idea. You know how welfare mothers are afraid to work because if they get a job and then they lose the job, they can't get welfare for a while because it's bureaucracy, all that stuff, it's very difficult. So they don't work or they work on the sly. What if we did this? What if everybody, it's only US, so if you're foreign, sorry, I don't know how it's going to work. But what if everybody gets $15,000? Every adult, $15,000, straight from the government. And then your next $15,000 that you earn, no taxes. And then you start paying taxes. Here's what it does. It puts us all on the same level. It makes everybody gets their $15,000. They can do with it what they want. Everybody gets it. And then they work. No matter what, they work. Everybody works. You know, the people who are the most depressed that I've ever run into in my life are not working. They don't feel that they've had that they're a positive enough effect on the world or whatever to work. And work is everything. You want to, you know, Bob Dylan said you want to serve somebody, so serve somebody. Anyway, that's my idea. Spread it around. You know, this is how good ideas start, right? Isn't that the name of my talk? Okay, start with something. I feel that desperation. I feel that desperation for all those welfare mothers. And this would be a nice way to get everyone feeling like, hey, we're all in the same boat. Hey, if you work, you make more money. It's not like if you work, you lose your welfare check. I think that doesn't make any sense. Okay, now, quickly, I'll give you a little bit of fun about Draper University of Heroes. I thought about creating a school, and then I went to my lawyer, and he said, okay, yeah, to create a school, and it's got to be accredited, you have to do this, and this, and this, and this, and this. My eyes were starting to glaze over, and I was thinking, God, I'm passionate about it, but I may not be that passionate. And then I came up with an idea, desperation. What if I don't want to be accredited? And he goes, oh, then you don't have to do any of this stuff. So I've made it a practice at Draper University to go through all the things I needed to do to be accredited and do the opposite. So you have to have, you have to teach history to be accredited. So we teach future. You have to have 3 permanent on-staff professors. We have speakers, amazing speakers that come in and inspire and drive people. And then there are all these security and safety things, and I thought, why don't we just get all the students to sign their life away before they come? And then we can just figure it out as we go. And you know, so far, knock on wood, that's working. And so we have this, we teach at the beginning, it's all about future. And what's great is we don't have to get caught in a curriculum. We don't have to be put into a box. So, you know, one session we might be teaching 3D printing, but then Bitcoin comes along, and then we're teaching Bitcoin. And then crowdfunding comes along, we're teaching crowdfunding. What's really fun about that is all the speakers are going to be relevant for now, and the entrepreneurs that go through the program are going to have the most up-to-date ideas. So, so we're going to have, and then we do a few other things. We do survival training that's both urban and rural. The urban survival training is, okay, you got 24 hours, go up to San Francisco, get a job offer on paper, and come back. 24 hours. 90% have come back with job offers on paper. Some were, you know, not the best jobs. But our thinking there is, hey, you know you can get a job in 24 hours, so go for it. You know, worst case, you go get a job. 24 hours, you come back, you got a job. Of course, that's in San Francisco. It's a little tougher in Detroit. But, and then we have rural survival, which I've actually just come back from. And we have Navy SEALs and Special Forces and Army Rangers all doing various maneuvers with the students. And they wonder, well, you know, why are we doing this? Well, as an entrepreneur, you have to go, and then you think your day's over, but then it's, all of a sudden it's just starting. And you don't know what's going to hit you as an entrepreneur. You've got to adjust, you've got to move, and it can hit you in the middle of the night, or it can hit you, you know, at 4 in the morning, or after a really long, hard day, and we want everybody to understand that they can go as far as they possibly can, and then go further. And so survival training is all about that. Also an appreciation for all of the great things that the free market has done for people. You go out there in the middle of nowhere, and you're freezing and walking around in the mud, and you come back and you go, hey, you know, these are pretty cool things. Comfortable chairs. The food's not bad. You know, all people have glasses, whatever. All these things came from creative ideas. So I don't know how long I have here, but I'm happy to go on and on. Any questions, thoughts? Anyway, thank you very much. It's been a great audience.
Thank you, sir.